Welcome! Today we'll be going through some steps to do if you notice your system is starting to run a bit more slowly than it used to. So this is going to be applicable to all computers. So if you have a home computer that's running slow, these same steps can be used for that machine as well. It is worth figuring out before you start this whether it's just the computer or if it's a part of the computer. What I mean by this is you may have noticed everything on the computer started running slowly. Maybe it's just the ProfitTrack software, or maybe it's just doing web browsing in general. So if it is just web browsing in general, it would be worth Googling internet speed test and seeing what sort of download speed you're getting. Depending on who you talk to, you'll get a varying response on how fast your download should be, although anything over around 5 megabits per second, and you should be getting a decent load time. If you're having issues with this, you will need to call your internet service provider, Telstra, Optus, whomever you may be through. If it is ProfitTrack specifically that's running slow, close it and ProfitTrack server down, then reopen ProfitTrack server. If it prompts you to do a check, go through and do one, though please note this process will take some time depending on how large your databases are and if they're damaged. If they are damaged, it will come up prompting you to do a repair, in which case do so. But if that doesn't resolve it, if you're still noticing slowness in ProfitTrack, call Independent Solutions and talk to the professional services team. They can organize a bespoke go-through of your system to optimize it for your usage. So for general PC slowness, the first thing to check for straight away is the computer's uptime. This is the amount of time the computer's been turned on for. So you can see this by right-clicking on your taskbar at the very bottom and clicking on Task Manager. Then click on the Performance tab. In the bottom right of this screen, it will show you the computer's uptime. So if your machine's been up for more than a day or two, restart it and see if you see any improvement. Even if you do see improvement, the remaining steps can still help boost your general computer's performance. So if you do restart, go back into Task Manager. If it's been restarted recently and you didn't need to restart it, you're still in Task Manager and we'll go to the next step. So while you're in this screen, go to the Performance tab and you should check the usage on each of the computer's parts, the CPU, the memory, and the disk. If any of them are spiking very, very high, the first thing to do is check out what processors are using up that specific part. So go to the Processors tab and organize by CPU, memory, or disk, depending on what was being used a lot beforehand. So I know a lot of my memory is being used and I can see straight off the bat that I have Chrome and Microsoft Teams chewing up a bunch of memory by themselves. So now that we've found some of the programs that are using the computer's resources, how do we reduce or remove the usage? Well, it depends specifically on what's using it. Some things the computer needs to function, some it doesn't, and some we use daily. I know from my usage that I don't need Microsoft Teams as I only use it very rarely, so let's talk about a bit of a cleanup of the programs we either don't use or don't use a lot of. While in Task Manager, go into Startup as a tab. If you are using Windows 7 or older, what you'll need to do is press Windows and R on your keyboard and type in msconfig and go across to the Startup tab. In Windows 10, that's been moved to Task Manager, although if you use those same steps, it'll just take you to Task Manager. So in here you can scroll through the list and disable all the programs you don't use commonly. For me, the ones I don't need when my computer starts up is the EFT client, Microsoft Teams, Skype, Spotify, or Wondershare. So we're going to disable all of those by right-clicking on them and individually and clicking disable. So what this will do is every time I restart my computer, those programs will no longer start automatically on the start of the machine. The next step is to completely uninstall the programs that we don't use anymore. So to do this, go into the Start menu in the bottom left by clicking on the icon and typing in Run on the keyboard and then opening the Run box. Type in this box appwiz.cpl and press Enter on the keyboard. Now the reason I've got you to do it this way is specifically because you may not have the same operating system as me, so if you have Windows 7 or Windows XP, it'll do the exact same with those. And this will show you all the applications installed on the PC. You can organize by the install date to see what programs were recently installed, to help you get a gauge of whether you can remove it or not. So it is worth mentioning at this point, you should only remove programs if you know what they are and what they do and know you do not need them. So for ProfitTrack, for example, we need Firebird, we need Flame Robin, and those are programs that most people don't know that you use on our machines, so we don't want people removing that sort of thing. So only remove programs if you know what they are and know you don't use them. So once you've done that and removed any of the programs that you no longer use, it would be worth running an antivirus scan. So we're going to run an antivirus scan on my machine just to make sure that it's all healthy. Now with mine, I might be using a different one to whichever one you may have installed. They do vary a little bit in how they look, but generally speaking, it will always say something along the lines of scan my PC now, to that effect. Once that's gone through and finished scanning, if it finds items, either delete them or quarantine them, it will give you a prompt to do that, and then restart the machine again. So that's the antivirus portion. At this point, we'll want to turn off the computer altogether and open the casing. We want to see if there's a lot of dust buildup inside, as this can cause overheating or failure of certain parts, all of which will degrade the health of your computer. If you do find a lot of dust, the best way to blow it out is with a can of compressed air, going in short bursts and staying a decent distance away from the PC's internals. You will want to use a can as opposed to a full air compressor, as the full air compressors generally end up with a bit of water in the tank from condensation. Now this gets blown out with the air, and any water in your computer is always a bad thing. Now the other problem with the full air compressors is they do have enough force to cause damage to the internals if it's blown too close to the internals. Once your PC is clean from dust, if it needed to be, turn the PC back on. Once it is booted to Windows, we want to right click on the bottom taskbar again and open Task Manager. So we're going to check the Processes tab and see if we have improved the performance. Now if you're still close to maxing out your CPU, your memory or your disk, you'll probably need to start looking at either upgrading those parts or replacing them. Now depending on what's currently capping out, you do have a couple of options. So if your CPU is currently maxing out, and it shouldn't be because you don't have a lot of resources, it could be a case of the thermal paste needing replacing. So if you're not too comfortable with taking out your CPU, cleaning off the old thermal paste, applying new thermal paste, it would be worth taking it to your local IT shop, having a chat with them about replacing the paste specifically, or the CPU altogether, if that's what's required. If it is your memory that is causing it to just max out, there is a test that is in Windows 10 and in most computers to check the memory. So in Windows 10, if we type in memory in the start bar, the Windows Memory Diagnostic tool will start up. If you go into this, it will require you to start the computer, and it will check the memory during the restart phase. Unfortunately, if there is errors with your RAM, the best step is to replace it. There's not much of a way around that. If it is your disk capping you out, the hard drive itself, there are a few things you can do just to try and see if perhaps it's the software on it, not the disk itself. So first is to press on the Windows icon in the bottom left, type in CMD, right click on command prompt and run it as administrator, and do a check disk. This will check your drive for faults, and if there is any, you'll need to do a check disk /F, press Y and then enter, and it locks the drive. Next time you restart the computer, it'll go through and try and repair any damage. Now if you find you have to do this more and more frequently, it means the drive is probably in a state where it's worth replacing. If you don't have one already, it would absolutely be worth moving to an SSD, though before doing so, make sure all your data is backed up to a secure place, which you should always do anyway, but especially before if you're considering replacing a hard drive, or if you suspect that you're having hard drive related problems. The other option with your hard drive is to download something like CC Cleaner, let it clean the computer of any junk files or temp files from things like past Windows updates. That might help the performance as well. The reason why you'd be looking at replacing parts is because your day-to-day programs are chewing up too much. So we've already removed any of the software that we don't use on a regular basis or don't use at all anymore. So all that's left is your day-to-day programs, and if that is still capping out your hardware, there's either some fault with the hardware if it used to be healthy, or you may be needing to look for an upgrade. So the parts there, those are the three main ones that you can easily swap out: CPU, the memory or the RAM, and the hard drive. Now I always recommend the hard drive as being a good swap, especially if you do have an older machine. Move to an SSD, they're super reliable, super fast, very, very good decision on that end. If you do have an older machine, it may be worth looking into upgrading. So if you are an IS customer looking to upgrade your parts or upgrade your computer, please give us a call. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.